Hi, everybody. Welcome to 6 Months Later, the podcast, 180 Days in the Making. Come on, I'm trying to do my work here. Why? Anyways, hi, everybody. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Hi, everybody. Welcome to 6 Months Later, the podcast 180 Days in the Making. We talk to interesting people about their lives and their hopes for the future, and then we check in with them in 6 months to see how everything's going. I am your host, Matthew Shadorn, and I'm joined as always by my co-host,
Tara Newton-Wordsworth. G'day.
Hey, Tara. How are you doing? Never mind. I don't care. I need to talk about the fact that Trump has COVID. Woo!
Do you know what? I just saw an update saying that he's leaving the hospital and he said to Americans not to be afraid of COVID.
Yeah.
Isn't that just fantastic advice to get people going out there and spreading the disease?
He's
wow.
The worst. So him having COVID has really tested how good, am I a good person? Because I am happy that this man got COVID. Because I feel like nobody deserves to die of COVID, but certainly he deserves to get COVID, right?
I mean, I feel like it's everyone's kind of moral dilemma at the moment, because I definitely feel that there was a part of almost every person that was like, yeah, and then at the same time, like, oh, that's awful, I'm sorry, but like genuinely not that sad. But the Democrats have been really nice about like kind of, seemingly, obviously I don't know them personally, but seemingly they've like taken down their like mean ads that were like ripping the shit out of him.
We can probably swear on this podcast. It's our podcast.
Yeah, fuck him.
But
so,
I don't know. Yeah, it is like it's not even just that he's a bad person. He's like actively making the COVID situation worse and actively doing really dumb things and actively being a bad example. And so the fact that he got COVID feels completely correct. And maybe he'll die of it. Maybe he won't.
But it's definitely looking like he won't to me. Like, I just feel also, the thing is he's got to, it's almost annoying because it's like, I feel like what's going to happen is he's going to be absolutely fine. And he's just going to use that as like even more of an ego trip. Whereas like, see, I can have it. It's fine. I'm going to, it's just, oh, God.
It's like, fine. Nobody dies of it. It's fine. Right. Yeah. That's the fear. That's what I'm afraid of too. But I honestly don't want him to die. Actually, I saw a tweet the other day that I think put it more succinctly. It said, I want him to die, but it's in prison. So,
wow.
It's like, I want to see him defeated. And if he, he'd be taking the coward's way out. But yeah, I never really worried about his health because they're talking about how he's an old man, but he's also an old man with the access to basically all the government's healthcare. So he was never, it's the whole thing with this COVID where it's like, it really hits the poor. That's where all the death is coming from for the most part. And anyways.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It is a tough one. But I think he's going to be fine. Sad. I mean, not sadly, but like I think it's going to be that thing where it's going to come out even worse, I believe, where he'll recover absolutely fine and he'll tell people not to worry. And
it'll get worse. Yeah. But we'll see. He's going to be an asshole about it. There's no doubt about that. That's my prediction for the future is that whether he lives or dies, somehow even if he dies, he's somehow going to be an asshole about it. But if he lives, he'll be insufferable.
Yeah. It'll just add to his thing of essentially genuinely believing that he's like a superhuman, really. Like you just, he can put his mind to anything. He put his mind to becoming president and he managed to do that. He can do whatever he wants, you know?
Yeah, I keep thinking that like if he's not reelected, like hopefully he's not. Like I never want to hear about him again. And then I just think about our poor listeners. We're just like ambushing them in April with like, I thought we were done talking about that guy. Like he went to jail. We're fine.
Or like he's president still.
It's the last thing I need to think about. Yeah, and I can't even listen to your podcast in my bunker anyway. So. But yeah. Sorry,
listeners. Sorry that basically we just talk about Trump every single episode. How annoying. We must get more content about other stuff.
Only 30 more days. I've got other stuff going on. I was just very excited about that. I wanted to share my excitement. I wanted to timestamp it, just how excited. And then people would be like, oh yeah, remember when he did that stupid thing where he had a photo op and he signed a blank piece of paper to look like he was busy. And it was dumb because he's dumb and everything he does is dumb. And it's like, it's frustrating that he wins or he does well, despite the fact that he's so incredibly dumb and everybody around him so dumb. Anyways. Life, right?
Yeah. Do you have any positive predictions for 6 months' time?
So it's early April?
In the future. I mean, October. Yeah, it's April, 5th of April, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm assuming for people in the future.
I predict that finally April Fool's Day will be something we all agree to never acknowledge again. I hope that no one ever talks about it or does any kind of like quote unquote pranks, because I hate it and it's lame.
Okay, that's a good prediction. I am predicting that there's going to be some kind of breakthrough with bees and, why they've been dying, and, hopefully we're gonna cure that.
Get more bees.
In 6 months.
Sounds good.
That's my prediction for 6 months' time. So fingers crossed.
Cool. Should we get to our guest then? Let's go talk to our
Harriet
guest.
Riley. I'm so excited.
Yes.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Our guest today is award-winning writer and climate change specialist who works for UNICEF and the United Nations, Harriet Riley. Harriet, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right?
Yeah, good. So nice to have you on the podcast, Harriet.
Yay.
It's so nice to be here.
How are things with you? Where are you at the moment?
I am in Greenpoint in Brooklyn in New York.
Oh, nice.
Which is where I have been since the lockdown began, as of 2 days after my birthday in March.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's that been?
It's been pretty good, There have been some big moments over the last couple of months, as I'm sure you guys know. New York has seen a lot of protests and a lot of scary moments with the pandemic and the big reckoning that's been happening here with racial justice. But it's also been kind of beautiful and kind of exciting because you get to be part of a community that's coming together and figuring stuff out, which is an exciting thing to witness from somewhere that's a little bit like the ground zero of the pandemic. That's been one of the hotbeds since the beginning.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are things kind of normalizing or reaching a new kind of equilibrium, or?
They absolutely are. And whether that's to do with the fact that things are actually going back to normal, or whether that's to do with the fact that people have a finite period in which they can worry about something.
Right. Yeah.
After they start to just kind of revert to their old habits anyway.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. But one of the fun things has been the fact that the alcohol laws have changed. And once upon a time, you could only buy alcohol in shops and restaurants and drink it in the restaurants. One of the first rules that they made to save the New York economy was that you can drink cocktails anywhere.
Ah.
So there's been a festive atmosphere where people walk down the street with restaurants that are out on the pavement now instead of in their shops, and you can just pick up a cocktail to go, and everything kind of looks quite beautiful because of that, because it looks like a festival and feels like a festival.
It's like Mardi Gras all the time.
It's Mardi Gras all the time, and people are drunk all the time. And
what else are you gonna do? Yeah, sounds good.
What else are you going to do in a global crisis?
Yeah, that sounds like.
How's it been? How is it working for UNICEF, and what's it been like? As in, like, have they? I mean, I'm assuming you've been working from home, and what's that been like?
Yeah, I have been working from home, and it's been amazing because, again, you have the privilege of seeing a crisis on front lines. You're working for one of the global institutions whose job it is to address the situation in a very absolute and concrete way. So, for example, UNICEF is going to be responsible for vaccinating all the world's children who can't get vaccines via their government. Oh. And we've already begun to make deals with governments and businesses in order to secure those vaccines in advance so that we can do that, because that's exactly what we exist to do. You know, this is the institution that vaccinated everybody against smallpox and vaccinated everybody against polio and was able to eliminate those two illnesses more or less from the world.
Wow.
And it's a great place to work in a crisis because all of your colleagues are aid workers whose whole job is spending their entire life in crisis zones. And this is kind of, in a weird sort of way, this is their happy place. This is when they're at their best, is when they're confronted with a big problem and they're trying to figure out how to solve it.
That's good. Yeah. They just weren't, were they just like, was everybody just kind of sitting around the office in February, just kind of like throwing crumpled up paper into baskets, just like nothing to do. And then they're like, pandemic, say, more like happy demic. I don't know. I couldn't think of a good pun. When you say what?
Well, the interesting thing about working for a UN agency is, oh my God, there's always something to do. Right, the world is, replete with problems, and then just it's more about new ones coming along, and you realizing that you have even more reserves and even more time and energy than you thought you had left to keep going and deal with yet more.
Right.
It's more like that.
That's amazing. Well, that's really good. I'm glad that somebody's like getting a lot of energy and sense of purpose out of this pandemic, because I feel like most of the people we talk to are just slowly being crushed under the weight of, of just life. And they're just, I don't know, like you'd be surprised how many people we talk to and they're just wearing pajamas. And
I'm in my pajamas.
Oh, well, never mind. And that is great. And that is what I'm saying like that is the way to operate comfortably. Yeah. I'm 100% for that.
I mean, I'm a climate person. My background is climate science and policy. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe I've got a bit more practice at, emotionally managing crises, because if you're a climate person, you're kind of in a constant state of crisis.
Right.
Everything is drama, everything is terror all the time, and you learn to modulate those emotions and have coping mechanisms pretty well. So, global pandemic is kind of like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah. This is, day at the office.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How do you feel, like, as in, is it from a climate perspective? I imagine the pandemic has obviously been quite helpful with reducing carbon emissions in terms of like flights and everything. How do you feel? Yeah, what's it like in the climate department at the moment?
I mean, it has and it hasn't. The really interesting thing is that it's proved what can happen and what we can do and how much that can reduce emissions. Then you look at the data and you're like, oh, this also hasn't reduced emissions perhaps as much as we would have wanted it to. And the reason for that is that, yes, there aren't any flights and yes, there were fewer people on the roads, but all of those other big important industrial processes and all the electricity that we use in our homes, and which is like essentially one of the largest sources of carbon emissions, all of that's still going on. And so, yes, we've made big cuts, but some of those big cuts have been mitigated by the fact that there have been such big fires this year and last year, which has released a lot more carbon into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And there's often something that happens when there's been a big economic slump where not a lot of carbon has been emitted, where in order to get back on track, a lot of economies like go into double time production once things are over and release even more carbon than they were before. So we have to kind of be smart about this. If you're a policymaker and a decision maker in the world of climate change and economic policy, you've got to actively choose to use this as an opportunity to cut down emissions.
Right.
It's not something that just happens on its own by shutting everything down. It's something that happens when you change the places that you're getting your energy, the way that you're doing agriculture. Yeah, it's a little more complicated than just shutting off the lights.
Right. Do you feel like that there's potentially changes in behavior that are coming out of this, like more people working from home as like a kind of a long-term trend, maybe also helping with climate change or with emissions and such?
Absolutely. I mean, something that a lot of researchers have been saying for a long time is saying, hey, the 4-day work week could help fight climate change.
Right.
Which is awesome. Job sharing can help fight climate change. And this is because, it reduces the number of people who are commuting. It has all sorts of kind of co-benefits about how and where energy is getting shared out across the grid.
Yeah.
And absolutely, particularly if you work for a big global institution like the UN, if you don't have to have all of your people on one continent to do their work, which you don't, you can have them spread out across the whole world. You're saving money on flights.
Right.
And it's very good. There are lots of things that we can learn from this that are going to reduce emissions long term. Hopefully also just be really good for families and communities who need a bit more flexibility in their working hours and working time.
Sure. Yeah,
it's definitely been amazing finding like how many people can actually work from home as
well.
Yeah, I think that was the thing, is like a lot of people were going to their boss and being like, can I work from home? And the boss was like, I don't know. And now it turns out, oh no, everybody can. And there's no excuses anymore,
That's exactly right, yeah.
So.
Which is especially good if you're a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you finding because like I was reading about a bunch of children or young people now have like climate anxiety. Do you have that like working in climate change, like as in that department?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a kind of constant background feeling, knowing that something's wrong and knowing that you can only ever do so much about it. And I think so many people, and it's this sense of grief too, because you know that you're going to lose things and lose places and lose people, lose opportunities because of this massive, massive problem, which is existential, it's like a meteorite coming towards the earth. And the way that I kind of grapple with that is I use this little phrase that I have, which is team climate, which is my way of reminding myself that I'm not the only person who's working on this issue. and that there are literally millions upon millions of other people who are out there in the world who also care about this and who are also doing their part, and that there is never a moment when somebody somewhere is not like giving their all to this problem. So I go to sleep on my continent, but then somebody wakes up on the other side of the world and they start building a better solar panel. And then they go to sleep and somebody wakes up, on the other side of the world and they start reforesting a rainforest. So my coping mechanism is to remind myself that I'm not alone, essentially, and that there's a hell of a lot of people out there who are doing everything they can about this.
Yeah, that's. I was gonna say that's what my wife does. She makes better solar panels. Like she's a scientist who works on next generation solar cell technology.
See, that's great. She's on Team Climate,
She
and
is.
now I can think about her. We've never met, but we're friends because we're both on the same
Right?
team.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you get along very well. Some of her best friends are Australian.
Aw.
But and then that way I can just burn things in the backyard whenever I want, just tires and stuff. I just have like an oil drum, and I just sometimes like to set it on fire. It just makes me feel alive.
Just go around cutting down trees unnecessarily.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, not hilarious. It's enjoyable. Anyways, but no, but that's great. That's a great way to look at it because it does. I have ever since I was very young, and they were talking about like when I was a kid, the big thing was the hole in the ozone. And I was like, why isn't everybody freaking out about this all the time? When I was just an anxious little kid, and it felt like nobody else was. My wife is pregnant. We're going to have a baby soon. And every day I'm kind of like, is this a good idea? I've kind of just been like, well, who wants to live past 30 anyways? So might as well have a kid.
Well, here's the thing. You identified something really interesting there, which is this idea that nobody else seems to be freaking out about it. Am I just crazy?
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like humans only have the capacity to deal with problems that other humans are also dealing with. And as long as we think we're the only one and we don't talk about it, then it just kind of gets worse and worse. Because it's like there's an elephant in the room, but everybody thinks they're the only one who can see the elephant. But you can actually all see the elephant, and if you just started talking about it, you'd actually be able to do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my advice is like constantly talk about climate change. You won't be a downer at parties. You will just shift the tone of the whole culture.
Right.
Subtly. They're like, we're not inviting Tara to anything anymore. She's so bloody
Oh my
depressing.
God, she's going to bring up climate change again. Well, I feel like I had like Cassandra complex where I'm just like constantly telling people about like there's all this shit going on and everybody's like, yeah, whatever. Well, it snowed last year, so I guess that's not true.
I think the other reason people don't talk about these problems is because they make them sad, and we kind of can't discount the power of emotions in dealing with massive global problems. Like we were talking about with the pandemic, people just run out of emotional energy to be anxious and they start behaving like everything's normal again. Oh, you can still catch the virus. And that's what climate change is like.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny with I remember when going into the pandemic with the World Health Organization kept like upgrading the level that it was on, and then all of a sudden it was like the World Health Organization has put COVID-19 as a pandemic, and everyone's like, is this bad? Should we be like, because we were all still like living our lives quite normally then, and it was such a weird feeling where it was like, I mean, I feel like we should be doing something, but the government's not told us to do anything. So,
well, that's the other thing. That's the other thing about climate change. It's exactly the same principles. Like, if you don't know, they've actually done studies about this. Like, if you don't know how to solve a problem, you don't register it as a problem because the human brain is very like, okay, what's next?
Right.
So, for example, if you tell somebody to quit smoking, but then don't give them nicotine patches or don't send them to like a quitting group, then they just keep smoking and they don't even remember that you told them to quit because if they don't have that next step, that way out, then they can't begin to believe in the problem.
I see.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So solutions and talking about solutions is one of the best ways to get people who are denying climate change or not doing anything about climate change to start caring about climate change and believing in it. It's just as simple as saying, well, here's something you can do. And that's enough to like spark, belief and spark action.
That's such a good point. I've never thought about it like that because I think every time I've watched some documentary and at the end it's just really depressing about how all the polar bears are like brown now and they're dead, and it's just that thing where you're just like, I don't know what to do about this. I can't like contemplate like how my little tiny brain is going to explode. So actually, if people do just give simple solutions or ways that we can make a small difference in our own lives, like I think that's definitely a way of making global change happen, like loads of people doing tiny things differently.
Right.
Exactly. And also, like, knowing more about how to make the big changes happen, like learning about how to take political action, protest action, social action.
Right.
You know, organizations who facilitate people doing that are really valuable and important.
Right. And murdering billionaires? Is that... No, I'm on my own on this one. Okay, well, I thought that was... I mean, I'm looking for solutions here, thinking outside the box.
We can redistribute somebody's wealth
Yeah.
without murdering them.
Thanks, Matt.
In the intro, I already talked a lot about how I wanted one old man to die.
Okay, so moving forward. Hey, so you're also a writer, very talented writer. Have you got anything exciting happening at the moment?
I do. I've got a couple of things. So mainly I'm a screenwriter, and I have two big projects that have been picked up by production companies in Australia. And one of those has been selected for funding by one of the state funding boards. One of three projects that was picked up in the last funding round, which is a big deal, because if you get picked up in that funding round, that means they're investing in you as a writer and they want to take the project forward to go into production potentially next year. So that's a huge deal.
Wow. Congrats.
Thank you. And the other one has been optioned by another production company in Australia. So I'm not going to say the names of any of these because that's, part of our non-disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that that's what's happened, and that I can tell you a little bit about what those projects are about and, you know, where I hope for them to be in 6 months, if that's what you'd like to hear.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
So obviously, being a climate person, one of these is about climate change. It's about a little group of little old ladies who become hardcore environmental activists to stop a fracking company from taking over their town. And it's a story that's about ageism and feminism, but most of all it's about climate change, and most of all it's just very funny. So it's in that genre of underdog comedy that you've seen with The Dish and Muriel's Wedding, that kind of classic style of, like, you know, a small town.
Right.
And a group of people who maybe start out thinking that they're small and appearing small, but finding their voice and becoming very big along the way.
So is it like the Monkey Wrench Gang meets the Golden Girls?
Kind of. I mean, I would have said it's kind of like Calendar Girls meets Erin Brockovich.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, nice. That's perfect.
That's good.
Yeah. So it's good fun. You know, it's like upbeat soundtrack, bright colors, lots of jokes.
Very nice.
And the other one is a TV series about aid workers. And it follows a group of aid workers who deal with what's called a level 3 emergency. So level 3s are the world's worst classification of emergencies, things like the Haiti earthquake or the Boxing Day tsunami. And it's about them going around from place to place, grappling with those problems as well as all of their personal problems, and meeting and living with the people who are living under these circumstances.
Oh.
So... yeah.
Is that a nonfiction series, or is it?
It's fiction. It's fiction.
It is fiction.
So it's fiction
okay.
inspired. It's a drama with lots of humor, because humor is how you cope in those kind of situations.
Right.
Inspired by real stories from aid workers and the people that they work with.
Nice.
So the pitch is that it's kind of like MASH, but for millennials. Like,
wow.
you could take like a camp of people who are in like an extreme situation, and all the things that they get up to try and stay sane and do the right thing. That's what it's about.
Sounds good.
That's so cool. I had a read of all your projects on your website, and they really, they sound so good. The one in 2050, I thought sounded really exciting.
Yeah.
So you've written quite a lot. Like, would you say how much, how do you manage to write so much whilst also having a full-time job for the UN, for the United Nations?
I mean, it's all about planning, very much about setting aside time to do it very actively. And, people talk about having a practice and setting up a practice. That's absolutely what I do. I write a certain amount a day, and I use my weekends, especially, to do the work.
Yeah.
I also had some time before my current job where I just had a certain amount of time off, a couple of months off, just to do the writing. And I can't emphasize enough how useful that was. My writing just got so much better in that period.
Oh, nice.
And, so sometimes focus is actually what you need. But other times, you're able to take a bit of a break and fit it in around other things. So like that combination of focus and bifurcating, you can come up with ways to make it work, and everybody has a different method.
So with your shows being produced in Australia, are you going to move back to Australia then?
I am, yeah. So very shortly, within the next month or so, I will be heading back to Oz, which I'm excited about because I'll get to be somewhere where the pandemic is less prevalent. But I'll also be, there with my producer, working in particular on the one about the climate activists that I told you about.
Uh-huh.
That one, hopefully will go into production next year, assuming that I can deliver 2 new drafts of the script by December. So once you get government funding for a project, you're on the hook to deliver certain things by certain deadlines.
Oh.
So I have to deliver basically 2 more drafts before the end of the year. And assuming that goes well, we're then able to go up for the next round of funding. And if that goes well, then we can actually start work on the film.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is it, I don't know how TV is really produced. Is it fairly common to, like, is the initial level that you've reached, is that harder, or is the next level the harder level, or?
I think this is the hard level to get this far.
Oh, okay.
That said, obviously it's like a narrowing funnel.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like every level loses a certain number of people along the way.
Uh-huh.
I don't exactly know what the numbers there are. And as, anybody who works in TV and film will know, you have to have an average of 7 or 8 or even 10 projects going at any given time for one of them to get made.
Right.
And the ratio of projects made to not made is for an individual in their life is 1 to 10. So you have to have multiple things going, which is more than anything requires stamina, because not only do you have to produce a whole bunch of things, you have to keep pushing each of them until one of them sticks.
Right.
And then you do it all again. Obviously, having one thing out there in the world makes it easy to get the second thing out there.
Right.
But in a lot of ways, you're also starting from scratch with every single new project, because you're going to be working with new people and you're going to have to get all the money again, and you're going to have to every new idea has to be proved. So, if you're going to be any kind of artist in the TV and film industry, whether that's an actor or a director or a producer or a writer, the thing you need more than anything in the world is stamina and patience.
It's making me anxious.
Yeah. It's anxiety inducing. That's why, having a real job is so great, because not only do I really like my real job, it's steady.
Right.
And it provides me with a lot of inspiration, and it moves at a far rapider and therefore more satisfying pace than TV and film, where you can submit something and not know what's happened to it for 6 months.
So what are you going to keep working for Unicef when you move back to Australia?
No, I'm going to take some time off. And if I want to, look for new roles or look for new jobs with an international institution or with nonprofits, which is what I usually do, then I'll do that. But like I said before, this is a period for me where I need to focus on the writing a little bit.
Right.
So I'm going to be writing for the next 6 months. And then...
How exciting.
It's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. And then beyond that, then I start making decisions about what happens next, because then you've got all your toes in the water and you've got a whole bunch of work out there, including hopefully some new things, because like I said, you've always got to be putting new projects out there, not just your old ones.
Right.
And I've been working on some new stuff during lockdown, which is great. And then we see where we go. We take it step by step, both in terms of career in general, but also I think all of us during the pandemic, we don't know what the world's going to look like in 6 months.
Right.
I'm so excited to talk to you in 6 months and see how it's going out there in Australia. And, I really, I guess we don't have to put this in, but actually, Harriet and I went to school together and in Western Australia, and it was so wonderful to see you, because Harriet actually wrote and directed a play that I starred in as a crazy waiter. And it's just so nice to see you, doing all these amazing things years later. It's really incredible. And I'm so excited to see what you'll do with this screenplay. I'm so jealous of you as well, getting to go back for summer and be living in a completely normal world, because Western Australia's got its own sort of almost statewide bubble where, because they've got this, the state's locked down and there's a really severe sort of quarantine for anyone who comes in. People are just living normally. You can literally just walk up and I don't know,
hug somebody.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I see.
They have this weird local custom there. It's called shaking hands. It's so odd. I don't know. I've never seen it anywhere else.
I do legitimately see, when I watch TV now and I see people just going up and hugging someone, sometimes I get that feeling of being what? Yeah, it's really weird. It's so oh God. And then you're oh, but in that time, you could hug people.
Right. In the before times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Harriet, what is it that you're doing these days that's not your work? Is there anything that you're really into? I don't know, that's not work these days? Other
than the writing, you mean? Other than both the writing and the work?
Right. Other than your day job and your writing in your spare time and producing TV shows and just bragging about your polished concrete floors. What else is going on?
I have taken up drawing during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
So I have been trying to draw. I have this particular sculpture in my house. I'm going to show it to you. It's a bust of Pericles. Do you know who Pericles is? Like a classical Athenian figure. He was an important statesman in the ancient world. When I was at high school, I don't know if Tara remembers this, but I studied ancient history. This is the guy who was like the guy when we were studying ancient history. He's a very important figure, but as you can see, it's just a really good object to draw.
Right.
And in this weird sort of unimaginative way of me taking up drawing, the only thing that I have drawn is this.
Huh.
I have drawn maybe like 15 or 16 different images of this one sculpture.
Wow.
So I have come up with an incredibly narrow but very relaxing artistic during lockdown.
That sounds nice. I mean, I feel like that's some kind of your boyfriend Pericles.
That's correct. Yeah. My ancient Greek dead boyfriend.
Oh, like my boyfriend. You wouldn't know him. You live.
You wouldn't know exactly.
Or
He lives in Greece 2,500 years ago.
He lives. Well, lives is a strong word. He's dead. He's pretty dead.
Yeah, he's quite dead. He died of plague. You'll be interested to know. He died in like the great pandemic that swept through Athens.
Oh.
And wiped
I am
him and his
interested.
family out. So there you go. He's thematic. He's topical.
I'm trying to think, and I want to feel like I'm probably going to sound like an idiot, but is he the guy who was married to Helen of Troy and who got kidnapped?
No, he's a real guy. So this is an interesting thing. With ancient history, it's really confusing because we have all these stories about ancient Greece and we have the actual stuff that happened. And the two things get really blurred together because all of the writers who write about the real people compare them to the mythological people and the legends. So Pericles was this guy who ruled over Athens for a very long period that was known as the Golden Age of Athens. And everything that we kind of think of as the ancient Greeks, like all the philosophy and the science and the art and the theatre and the democracy, they kind of happened in that period when he was in charge. So that's why he's like a famous figure and considered a great statesman. And he led Athens when it was the premier state and power in the Mediterranean. And he's famous not just because of that, but because, you know, in a lot of ways, he's one of like the fathers of democracy, one of the people that we look back on as being like these kind of fundamental formative characters.
So it's his fault.
Yeah, exactly, in the history of Western politics. And it's a really sad story because he's a great guy who does all this amazing and really important stuff, but then as the empire becomes more powerful and things become more complicated, he starts to have to make really difficult decisions and there's all these compromises and then he tragically dies of plague. So, you know, he's a fascinating figure for that because he's like a kind of a trial run, an archetype for so many of the political figures that, you know, we've had since in history who start out trying to be good. Things get really complicated. They kind of stay good, but maybe don't do everything just right. Maybe a little bad. You know, it's like how do you balance your principles with the necessities of actually running a country?
Kind of like Obama.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Hey,
that.
he's a
It's
real
like-
Obama figure.
Hey, you're not allowed to agree. You're not allowed to have any opinion on this, Harriet. Oh no, wait, he's someone of the past, isn't he? So it doesn't matter.
I like to think about classical statesmen. That's
Fine. Okay.
But that's good. And he's also an excellent model for your artistic endeavors.
He's an ancient Greek, so he's kind of a babe. He's great to draw.
Right.
Are we allowed to see any of your drawings? I guess this isn't fun for people who are listening.
Yeah. I don't
This is not fun for people who are listening, but we'll do it.
Okay.
I'll get them out for you. Do-do-do. The clattering that you can hear is me trying to get down a sketchbook.
I feel like that drawing the same thing over and over again is kind of like a Zen practice. Like it'd be like a thing where you know an object to fully know an object or something, to just draw it over and over again.
Exactly, and that's kind of why it's been so nice. It's partly on purpose for that reason. It's also partly because, you know, I'm in lockdown. There's nothing else to draw. You know? Unless I want to draw my shoes or something. Which I could do. There's no reason I couldn't do that.
Do you ever watch, like, Netflix?
Yes, absolutely. Here's one. There's a Pericles.
Hey, he looks good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely, like, it looks like him.
Yeah.
Looks like him. That's what
The
you're
solid
going for.
Pericles.
That's him.
Have you...
Oh, I've also been drawing like Dar Hammarskjöld. That's the one other thing that I've been drawing. Dar Hammarskjöld was the Secretary General of the United Nations in the 50s. That's Dar.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's good, actually. I really like him. He looks really...
He is. He's very kind of noble.
intriguing.
He looks very secretarial generally
He does,
secretarial.
doesn't he? He's got that very statesmanly.
Yeah, statesmanly.
Yeah.
My wife's a bit of a UN nerd. I think you guys would be good friends. She wanted us to go. We went to Switzerland for vacation last year.
Oh, that's good.
And we
I
went-
like that one.
We went to the UN in Zurich. Oh, nice. Did you draw that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very good.
No way. That looks so good. Okay, I really feel for people who can't see this, but that's fantastic. Sorry, Matt, continue.
No, I was going to say we went to the Zurich, the United Nations in Zurich, and saw the building and did the tour and everything.
It's cool, right?
Yeah,
it's interesting. That was also where back in the day, well, in Switzerland, I don't know about Zurich, but certainly in
or Geneva, that's what it is, isn't it? Wait,
the League of Nations.
Yeah.
Space.
Sorry, it was Geneva. It was somewhere on that lake. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's dark.
Oh. Yeah.
Wow. I just feel like slightly intimidated by the level of intelligence that you just sort of seem to exude.
Thank you.
I just feel like who is doing how is it even possible to achieve the amount of stuff that you're achieving? Like you're working for Unicef by day, you're writing screenplays that are picked up by night, and you're finding time to like draw, ancient Greek people. Like it's a lot.
I mean, I'm locked in a room. Bear in mind that I'm locked in a room.
That's true.
And unlike you, I don't have children.
That's true. Yeah, the toddler phase is very intense. I feel like once they're in nursery, I feel like I'm gonna just achieve so much stuff. Like I just feel like it's that I just have to wait another 6 months, and then Matt's gonna have a tiny baby. So by that time, like I'll be having to do the heavy lifting of all the work for this podcast because he won't be able to do anything anymore.
That's not true.
Well, if you think this is bad, you should hear about Hammarskjöld, this guy, the guy who was Secretary General of the UN. As well as being Secretary General of the UN, he spoke 4 languages, sat on the Swedish Academy, which chose the winners of the Nobel Prize, was an amazing photographer who had his photographs published in National Geographic, was a poet, was a great mountaineer, and when he wanted to relax from a hard day of, solving all of the world's problems, which he did frequently, he ended 13 wars and helped 40 separate countries get their independence, he would just translate things, like entire books, from one language to another.
Just for fun.
Just for fun. So, this is what people did before there was Netflix.
Wow,
right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, what are you watching on Netflix?
Okay, so my thing is that I go back and I watch all of the old British cop shows. I'm obsessed with detective series and murder mystery, and also all the Scandinavian ones. So I'm watching Young Wallander, which is a British/Swedish show. I'm watching Rita, which is a Danish show about, because I used to live in Copenhagen for context in Denmark. I'm watching Rita, which is about a teacher with unorthodox teaching methods. I'm watching Organ, which is the Danish political drama. And I'm watching all of the kind of old British mystery shows like Morse and Endeavour and stuff like that.
Wow. Well, I just love that you just play by your own rules, don't you? You always have, like, even when I remember when we were in year 8 and everyone was like, oh my God, like, did you watch Home and Away yesterday? And you were just like, no, but I'm watching Monty Python at the moment. I love it so much. And everyone's like, what's Monty Python? Yeah.
It's an early sign that you're going to grow up to be a geek.
Yeah.
Discovering Monty Python early.
Yeah. I mean, it is fantastic though.
It is pretty great.
Well, what do you have? What are your predictions for 6 months' time? Like as in, I think obviously we know to some degree what you're probably going to be doing. What do you think? Yeah,
you're going to be in Australia in 6 months, and hopefully you'll have turned in your drafts of your. Will you know about your funding at that point?
No, I don't think so. I think it'll be just getting to a point where we, or maybe we will. Maybe we'll have been able to apply by then and got the next round of funding. If so, that would be amazing. My fantasy would definitely be that that's happened and that we can keep pushing forward. Because like I said, it's a slow-moving industry.
Right.
And some progress would be amazing. It's my hope that one of the other projects that I'm working on will have been picked up by then. It's my hope that I will have at least finished halfway one of my other project so that I can start putting that out there in the world.
Okay.
That's the ambition. So yeah, these are the stakes that we're going to put in the ground. One project up for the next round of funding. One project picked up by a new producer, and one new project halfway finished. That is my ambition.
Cool.
More my to-do list that it is a prediction.
All right.
Well, now at least you've got us as
hold me
accountability. Yeah, exactly.
Holding your feet to the fire. And then what about, in general, do you have any big swing predictions for the next 6 months? You think we'll have this kind of climate change thing licked by then, or?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that. I mean, it's going to be summer in the Southern Hemisphere, which means there could be a new round of fires in the Amazon and a new round of fires in Australia.
Oh.
I'm really hoping that that doesn't happen, and that because of the big fires earlier this year and last year, new measures will be in place to stop that from happening.
Are they going to say because of the big fires last year, there's really not much left to burn, so, you know.
Well, see, I'm from
Glass
Western
half full.
Australia, and my anxiety is that the eastern states caught on fire last time. It could be the western state this time, you know? So my hope is that that won't happen, but I think there's an outside chance that WA could go up in flames this December and January.
Are you moving
Fingers
to Western
crossed.
Australia, or are you...
I am, yeah.
Oh, okay. In Perth, or...
Rural area in the southwest, a place called Albany. So we would be near the flames if that were to happen. So, you know, I'm hoping it doesn't.
Fingers crossed.
And I'm hoping that everybody's learned some big lessons from last time, but we'll see. So that's one of my big ticket predictions. And my other big ticket prediction is that the virus won't have gone anywhere, but that most countries will go back into their second wave lockdown. In the Northern Hemisphere, some of them will, anyway. But then a lot of them will be coming back out again in 6 months' time. So by the time we get to March next year, I think that other restrictions will start to ease, and things will start to take on a bit of a semblance of normality again.
That's good. That's
nice.
We hope that too.
That's positive.
It's not necessarily going to be super normal, but, you know.
Yeah, slightly more normal, or who knows
Yeah,
what.
or rather they'll be feeling a lot like they do right now. Things, because it'll be 6 months from now, we'll have gone through in the Northern Hemisphere the winter cycle. It'll be coming to the end of the winter cycle, and then we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, that sounds good. We're not going to say goodbye to you because through the miracle of editing, we are going to stitch this together when we talk to you again in 6 months, and it'll be seamless. But one thing we ask our guests to do, hopefully, I don't know, we haven't done it yet, but hopefully it'll work. But one thing we ask our guests to do is we ask them to start a sentence or a joke that they do not know how it's going to end. So you have a short period of time to think of something clever and then something even more clever in 6 months.
Okay, I'm going to go with a diplomat, a scientist, and a horse walk into a bar. And the bartender looks up and he says, "Hey, you guys, you cannot have that horse in here. This is a place of business. This is a place where we're selling drinks, no animals. You got to get that thing out of here." And the diplomat leans over the bar and says, "Listen, buddy, listen." And he looks around from place to place. He goes, "I need to tell you something about this horse." While he's talking, the scientist is there, he's stroking the horse. He's in his white coat. It's very, very serious. And he says, "That horse controls the nuclear codes for every single country who has nuclear weapons on this planet." And the bartender looks really, really skeptical, and he says, "Man, I don't believe you. What are you doing with this horse in my bar?" So listen, we just need a place to stash the horse. And that's where I'm going to leave it.
What?
This is a 3-part joke. You guys are going to have to wait for another 6 months to hear the third part of the joke. Turns out it's a really long joke. I didn't realize that when I set the whole thing up because
I think you're stalling now.
What I love is that you're like literally like demanding a third part of this interview. We're definitely going to do this again in 6 months. To be honest, we could do. I mean, it would be quite fun to check in a year's time anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could increase it every time. You could do 12 months and then like 18 months, you know?
I mean, who knows? We could do as like a celebration of the podcast. We could come back like with certain interviews, like, for years, 5 years down the line.
I think it makes a lot of sense because this must be such a valuable thing for creatives who, the hardest thing about being a creative is that this stuff takes a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And knowing that other people are going through that and knowing how long it takes them, I think would be really valuable to most people in the creative industries. So that's why I just love the concept behind this podcast.
Oh, thanks, Harriet. Well, it's so lovely to see you again. I loved listening back to your first half. I really enjoyed it. I also felt really like, God, I'm achieving nothing with my life listening to you, but it was so lovely to like just hear all your exciting things you're doing. So where are you now? Are you in Australia?
I'm in Australia, yeah, as promised. I'm back in WA.
Wow. How's it been? Are you happy to be back?
I'm so happy to be back. It's lovely here. And it's been really great. I had a really smooth process getting home, which I know not everybody did. But it was actually pretty straightforward, I got on the plane, I did my 2 weeks quarantine, and now I'm here and I've been back for about 5 months.
Oh, amazing.
Oh,
wow.
Nice. So, Harriet, you're back in Western Australia.
I am, yeah.
So, predictions, let's just talk about your predictions that you had for yourself. Did you get funding for your project yet? Have you heard about that?
I did. This is the big news. So very, very pleased to report that we got the second round of funding.
Wow! Congratulations! That's brilliant.
So that's prediction number 1 of 3. Basically what that means is, as I said last time, I had to write 2 new drafts of the script, deliver those, and then we would see if we got the next round of funding. We've got the next round of funding, which means I have to deliver 2 new drafts in another roughly 3 months. And so I've delivered 1 of those, and now I'm starting work on the second one. I've worked with 2 separate script editors to do that, and basically it's tracking. And the big news is that if all of that comes off, by the second half of the year, we will have the script out to directors and to actors.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
With the intention that we start filming next year. Now, to be clear, that's all predicated on us being able to raise $6 to $10 million, which is how much we need.
God.
Yes. Because newsflash, movies are expensive. So if we're able to raise that money, then we can start filming by next year. And hopefully, again, that relies on us getting all of the actors that we need. But that's how TV and film works. You've got there are lots of moving pieces because it's all about different creatives having schedules that add up. And so now we're starting to get into that phase of who's available and can we do it together.
Do you have anyone kind of, because I remember you saying it's older women, right? As in it's a group of old. Do you have any people that you would love? I don't know if you're allowed to say this, but do you have anyone you'd love to see for the parts?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say who we would like to approach at this early stage. As you say, it's all older women. Because it's about a group of activists who are largely over 60. So, and it's set in Australia, so that kind of gives you a really clear pool of actresses that you're pulling from. We want to approach Noni Hazelhurst.
Oh, I love Noni.
The great Noni Hazelhurst of Play School.
Yeah, I loved her so much on Play School.
For our generation, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
People like Jackie Weaver, Judy Davies.
Amazing. Oh my God, she would be awesome.
There's an amazing Indigenous actress called Leah Purcell. Several other actresses kind of in that sort of territory. And we're going to have 1 UK actress, and hopefully the first person that we send it to is Emma Thompson. But we are thinking of some other people too.
Wow. Oh, man, that is so exciting. What an amazing cast that would be. Well, I'm so excited to see what happens with it. Your other predictions were eerily accurate because they were just your thing about the fires you had the massive fire in Western Australia, right? Near Perth. That was awful.
That's correct. Oh, yeah, and it was up near where my grandparents live.
Were they okay?
Yeah, totally. So the farm up there in that region, it was accurate, which is sad, but also, this is the nature of having been a climate scientist for a really long time. You get used to predicting the direction that disasters are going to go.
That was really, really amazing, listening back to that. And then obviously your predictions about, Europe going back into lockdown and then now coming out of it again were also very accurate, although some parts of Europe are going sort of back into lockdown now. Yeah, which is sad, third lockdown. But I think the thing that we didn't talk about, which is a really bright spot, is the vaccine rollout. Oh, yeah.
And the fact that, even 6 months ago when we were having this conversation, that didn't even come up. The idea that, the vaccine was going to be ready and that so many people would have got it. But the fact is that they did. And yes, lots and lots of people still need to get it all over the world. But it's a really bright spot that it's happened and that so many have,
Yeah, it's amazing. I had mine 2 weeks ago.
Amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It was cool up until yesterday when they were the AstraZeneca thing is going to not be given to young women anymore. And I was like, great, that's me. So that was slightly stressful. But thankfully, it's been more than a week since I had it. So I didn't, die of a blood clot. Yay. But I guess I was...
Did you feel when you didn't die of it, were you does this mean I'm not young anymore?
Yeah, I was immediately very angry.
Yeah.
I must say, when I was getting the news yesterday, the news updates, I felt quite sad because I think that the risk is actually so small, but it's being blown so massively out of proportion that so many people will be put off having it. And that is really sad because actually, your chances of having anything go wrong are literally they're less than 1 in a million. So it's that thing where you're just oh my God, please just keep getting the vaccine because it's much safer to get it than it is to get COVID.
Sure. I mean, I think the big lesson here is, imagine being the person who has to make that decision about whether to keep giving that vaccine or not. And the person who has to make the decision about whether you're going to put out the press release to say, oh, yes, there's a risk of blood clots. And this is the life of the civil servant. And I think that people don't know just how often and just how frequently, there's somebody in a government agency somewhere. And, I have sympathy for this because once upon a time that was me, when I did my job at Unicef and all of my colleagues. What are we going to advise people? What are we going to say? Knowing that there's always like a 0.2% risk. And, if you've got 1,000 people, that is some people. 0.2% is some people, but it's not the majority. And you have to start to use all of these heuristics to make those really difficult calls. Like, there's this phrase that doctors have, which is rare cases make bad policy, which is an expression which means, you've got to design your system for the thing that's most likely to happen, but have a procedure in case that very rare, very unusual thing does happen. Don't design your system against the very rare thing, because then you'll miss all the people who are getting the common thing. Even if the rare thing is much more scary and much more dangerous. And yet you have to have a plan for the thing that's much more scary, much more dangerous. And that's what the pandemic is. It's like this thing that governments all know there was a possibility for, which is why many of them have stockpiles of, masks and PPE and all that sort of thing. Because we all knew that there was a potential for a big respiratory pandemic to happen. But some countries, had more preparation and some countries had less. And that's all about weighing the odds against, everything else that your healthcare system needs. I always just think, at least I'm not the doctor who has to make the decision about who gets the respirator and who doesn't.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a nightmare.
And like all policy is like that, all government and politics is like that. It's somebody somewhere along the chain trying to make a decision roughly along the lines of who gets the respirator and who doesn't, without actually being on the front line and having to imagine themselves on the front line and having to try and figure out, how to make those calls. It's kind of unsexy, because it's a lot of statistics and it's a lot of, reasoning and it's a lot of careful thought. And then some journalist says to you, well, why didn't you do this? And you're sitting there going, well, there are like 18 separate reasons on my pros and cons list for why we did this and not that. And our reason is defensible. Usually, most people who are smart, careful people have a defensible reason for the decision that they made, and other people are not. And, you've just got to hope that you're working in a system and in a country that mostly has thoughtful, reasonable people trying to make those very complicated calls.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah. And speaking of being in a reasonable country, I guess, you're in Australia and the pandemic is seemingly under control there, yes?
More or less, yeah.
But you're settling back into Australia. You didn't move to Perth. Where did you move to again? It was Albany?
Albany? Yeah. It's Albany. It's 5 hours south of Perth, and it's basically on the corner of the state. So exactly where the Indian Ocean and the Southern Ocean meet.
Okay.
It's a lovely coastal town.
By the beach.
What was it like getting over there to, just to be able to live normally again after having lived in New York, which was like, obviously, as you said previously, kind of like the hot spot for COVID in the world, and then to go back to kind of normal life. Was that easy? Was it confronting? Was it, how did you feel when you hugged people again?
It was great. It didn't feel weird in a strange sort of way because, I don't know, I think there's a kind of psychological aspect to it, which is, home is your safe place, and coming back to somewhere that's always been safe, it just felt normal that everything here was fine, which speaks potentially to a lack of imagination on my part, maybe. An inability to recognize the potential for danger in your own environment, though obviously, like I said, we had those fires. I think there is a thing that a lot of Australians and New Zealanders go through in particular, which is, we're going to be fine. Everything's always going to be all right here, And there's real benefits to that because it makes you happy and positive and allows you to take risks and feel confident and feel safe. But maybe it has a downside that when there's a big problem, you perhaps don't address that problem as well as you could. That said, I think we've done a pretty good job of addressing this problem and, without wishing to overanalyze it too much, it was just a real relief to be in one of these places that by dint of both its geography and its leadership was able to be really happy and safe. And I'm referring to Western Australia there as opposed to the whole of Australia.
Yeah, because they've been so disciplined with keeping it shut. What were you going to say, Matt?
I was going to say, I don't get that impression that Australians think everything's going to be fine, because most of the Australian movies I've seen are very post-apocalyptic. I don't know. It's a lot of Mad Max and The Rover, and the other day I watched Wake in Anger.
Wake in Fright?
Fright, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Which is very upsetting.
It's very upsetting. It's about the desert, It's about that sense of isolation. And, I often think that Scandinavian movies and Australian movies could be completely transposed one to one. Because the only thing that you change is the temperature and everything else stays the same. It's like it's kind of these people who don't talk much but who drink a lot, getting into these very kind of dark, enclosed situations in these very stark landscapes.
Right.
Maybe it's also like because the temperature is quite extreme, even though it's nice in Australia, it is still extreme. Like, I was talking to a friend out there the other day, and she was saying it's only now getting to that point where you can kind of go out for a walk in the day and not feel like you're going to die, because it's so hot.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. Happy birthday for March, by the way. How was your birthday?
Thank you very much.
Did you have a nice time?
It was wonderful. Yes, it was great. I am now 33, which is the Jesus birthday.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah.
That's like, have I actually achieved anything? Like, if I was being crucified this year, would I have achieved what I wanted to achieve with my life?
Exactly. It's like, have I founded a major world religion and fundamentally changed, how human life operates on the planet? The answer is no.
Yeah, not really, not 100%.
Not really. But then at the same time, very few people can say yes to that. So,
probably really only Jesus. I mean, he's up there with that. I mean, probably a few other people have made some pretty big impacts.
Yeah.
Okay, so
what did I miss?
We were talking about the fact that Harriet just turned Jesus's birthday, 33.
Oh, I see.
In March.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And, was everything okay? Is your house burning?
No, the baby got a hold of some matches, so it's fine.
What is he like, eh? He's not even 3 months old yet, already burning stuff. That's great.
No,
can we talk about that? Because, I'm sure you've done other podcasts, other interviews, but on the last one, we were talking about the fact that you were going to have a baby, and now you've had the baby. I feel like that's a much bigger development.
No, I would trade him in a minute for a development deal.
If there were like a Rumpelstiltskin of, screenplays.
Yeah. It's like they'll trade my firstborn and then they'll weave some straw into a screenplay. And
exactly.
And and then
well, actually, I wanted to ask you about that, Harriet, because this is what as in you've actually been able to just write in these last 5 months, which is very different, because before obviously you were working full time and writing on the weekends and at night and stuff, and which is amazing. But how has it been working full time as a writer?
Two things. First of all, it's awesome because I love, to be able to focus wholeheartedly on these imaginary worlds that I've created for myself, in which my characters live, and I get to tell those stories, and it's great. It's like living inside your favorite TV show because it's the one that you're writing.
God, that's so cool. That's amazing.
That's cool. The other part of it, though, is weirdly, you seem to have just as much work to do on other things because you're still, people will call you and say, oh, well, can you just give me some advice on this? And people will say, oh, well, there's this new project that's come up and you can just consult for 3 or 4 days. And then somebody will say, well, there's this job, you should apply for it. And you'd be surprised how much other stuff you find to do when you're supposed to be writing full time. And there's part of your brain which is going, hang on. This was supposed to be about me writing. And you have to kind of rationalize it. You're like, okay, wait a minute. Does writing full time mean literally getting up every single day, sitting down at the desk at 9 o'clock and writing through to 4 o'clock, which is what I usually try and do every day? Or is it, when you think about your real job, is that what you're doing when you're doing your real job, your normal desk job? Or are you spending huge amounts of time talking to your colleagues and answering emails and doing all this other stuff that seems kind of vaguely superfluous, but at the end of the day is the job? And what I've learned is that, yes, devoting yourself full-time to writing means you get a lot more writing done, but it doesn't take away all of that other stuff that you have to do in your life, whether that's laundry, or having meaningful conversations about important projects with your friends, or having calls with potential agents or producers, or for example, I'm going to be hosting an event shortly, and I've been volunteering for this other campaign that's going on down here. So like what I'm trying to say is that I don't think anybody really writes full time. Maybe some people do when they're on a really hardcore deadline, or maybe I'm just doing it wrong.
Well, have you listened? Have you sort of read up on what other writers do, like as in people, because I'm sure I remember, was it Stephen King or something that like locks himself in his room for like a month or something like that? I don't know, I can't remember what it was, but I remember reading something about someone who sort of will do that thing of just like going into their room and not coming out essentially until they've finished their novel or whatever. So have you read about what other people do, or is this just something that you've sort of developed yourself?
It's a good question. So when we talked last, I was writing. Okay, so winding the tape back a little bit here. You remember how last time we talked, I said, I want to start a new project, or I want to kind of make big progress on a new project other than the one that we've already talked about.
Right.
So that's what's been happening. While we were in lockdown in New York, I set myself the task of writing 500 words a day on a new project. That project has subsequently turned into a novel, which is 85,000 words long. I submitted that novel to a program called the Faber Academy. Faber is a big publisher in the UK and Australia, and they run this program whereby they select a certain number of aspiring novelists every year. It's roughly somewhere between the 10 and 20 mark. And those people take a course with them, and then at the end of that you get published in something called the Faber Anthology, and then if you're really lucky you find an agent or a publisher as a result of that work. So I got selected for that program, which is
congratulations.
Awesome. I'm now Thank you very
amazing.
much. I'm now in a class of 10 people, all of whom are, working on their first novel. And the point of this story is that I finished the first draft of the novel in lockdown while I was in New York. Now, since coming back to Australia, I have been trying to write the second draft, which means editing and rewriting as opposed to straight up just like bashing out 500 words a day, Editing is much harder than writing. Editing is more important than writing. Editing is where the real writing happens, And so the progress has been a lot slower on that relative to what I was doing before. And I've had to kind of accept that and learn that this is where the real work happens, And the same has been true of these redrafts of the screenplay. I've had a script editor working with me, and now I'm about to start working with a new script editor. And I don't think I would have been able to do those new drafts without that script editor. And I think there comes a point in most writers' lives where that's true. They get good enough on their own to get some attention and to get, some kind of deal or some kind of support. And then that support comes in, whether it's in the form of an agent or a producer or a script editor, and basically forces them up to the next level. And that's what I'm going through right now, is this kind of forcing process of going up to the next level. It's kind of like having a coach or a personal trainer. And I find it hard to imagine getting to the next level without that. When you look at a celebrity and they're so thin and they're so fit and you're like, how is that possible? Right. How do they do that? And then you remind yourself, well, they have a personal trainer and they have a dietitian and all that sort of thing. That's true with like writers too.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in that situation now, and hopefully, we'll get up to the next level where I get an even better, dietitian and an even better personal trainer.
I think I remember reading something about that when the second series of Fleabag came out, and everyone's like, oh my God, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is like a genius and she's phenomenal, which she is, she's super talented and I love Fleabag. But then I read this article saying like she had a huge amount of help with that, like as in a huge amount of really talented, like people working on that with her. And I think that's really important to remember, because you can be quite overwhelmed by people's talent, and when you think that they're just doing it on their own, and actually a lot of the time, a lot of people producing great work have an amazing director or an amazing editor, or, and they are working with teams of really talented people, and it's not just one individual. So I think that's really encouraging, because it's actually like, we are better when we work with other people who help us and inspire us and mentor us. So that's fantastic. That's great to hear.
It's really cool. And Tara, what you just said reminds me of something that happened to us when we were in high school together, which is that time that I wrote that play that you were in.
Oh, yeah.
It was the first time anybody had like read something that I'd written.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, well, like, any time that anybody had performed something that I'd written. And it completely blew my mind because the actors were just like, you and me and our mates at high school, bunch of high school girls. But everybody who, like, acted in that did something different with the script that I hadn't been expecting as a writer, and they made it better. And that was a completely transformative experience for me because up until then, all of my writing had been happening in my own head, And I've kept that with me ever since. And this idea that one day you're going to be working with people who are, as you say, super talented and have so much to contribute to it, and they're going to make you better. They're going to make you look really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's that balance of finding what's important to you to keep and what you're willing to let go of, just because obviously there'll be things that maybe are really important to you and you're like, no, that is why I wrote this whole piece. So that's not changeable. But then there's something else that you're like, you know what, that's fine. You're right about that. I'll let that go.
Exactly.
Which will be, I guess, a process that I imagine you're already going through to some degree. So what you've now actually got, because you were also doing the TV series, right? Like, as in, so what you're doing, the TV series, the film, and this novel, that now at the same time?
That's right. That's right. So I can tell you firmly that the TV series hasn't moved, which is normal. Basically, the TV series has been pitched since we talked to maybe 2 to 3 more production companies who, had the potential to come on and partner on that. And they turned it down for a whole bunch of reasons that,
because they're small-minded jerks. They don't know good TV when they see it.
Because there's like a million reasons that you can get turned down. They can turn it down because they don't like it and it's shit. Or it can get turned down because, their slate's already full, or because they feel that they've already got something on their books that's too similar. There's a million reasons that a thing cannot get made. And like the stars really have to align for it to be made. So the point is, we talked about 3 things last time on the call. We talked about the film, the book, and the TV show. And, 2 of those things have moved, but one of them hasn't. 2 out of 3 ain't
To be
bad.
honest, that's a pretty amazing hit rate.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Totally. I'm happy with that. I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you were saying in the last half, it was normally like 1 in 10 things that gets sort of picked up. So that's amazing. That's really exciting. Oh, have you been doing your drawing still?
No, I've been doing less drawing. I've been doing some embroidery.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to see my embroidery?
Oh, that's beautiful. We're looking
mermaid?
at
An
embroidered
It's a mermaid.
Wow.
Yeah, neat.
She's meant to be like a siren from like Greek myth because the book that I'm writing is based on Greek myth, so she's thematic.
I love the way you always have things that are thematic in these. You had that as well in the first half. Oh, he's still in there. Great.
Yeah, I brought Pericles back from New York with me, so he came on the long journey through quarantine.
Aww.
He's still with me, which is great.
I was going to say your old apartment in Greenpoint looked very nice, but your new place looks huge by comparison. Just the small corner we can see. Is it a lot more space? Is it a bigger place? Is it nice? You like it?
Well, confession time. This is my parents' house.
Oh, that's
okay,
nice. How's it living with your mum and dad?
It's good. It's really good because they have a really nice place and they're very chill. And, it's not really possible to, come all the way back from New York and suddenly get an apartment or a house in Australia. That's not an easy thing to do. No. It's much easier to stay with your folks. And that's what I'm doing. And, it's safer under the COVID circumstances because we can lock down anytime here.
Right.
And yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Are your parents still working? Because if I remember correctly, was your dad a psychiatrist?
That's right.
Is he still working?
He's not. He's retired. And my mum's a painter, which is why we have so much artwork in the house.
Oh, amazing.
And she still works. She's still painting and sculpting. And she's got an exhibition on right now, which is really cool. Dad is retired. And so, yeah, it's very mellow here. And we just go to the beach every day and go for long walks every day.
Wow.
And then I write and occasionally, do other things like consult to a friend on a project that they're working on or whatever, and it's all good.
Sounds like a really beautiful way of living. Sounds really nice. I was talking to my grandma a couple of days ago about how expensive Western Australia has got that it's like crazy house prices over there now because of
Yes.
COVID.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, one of the safest places to be in the world right now, like that you just cannot get anywhere to rent or buy now.
That's why I'm at my parents' place.
Yeah. That's frustrating for us because we were thinking about coming back at some stage, but now we're like, let's just leave it until, you know, all this blows over, because I'm sure in a couple of years maybe things will get a bit more normal, I hope. Because, you know, I'm sure in 2 years it's not still going to be the safest place on earth. Like, I'm sure, well, I hope that things will be more normal in a couple of years.
You hope that everything else gets safer, not that Western Australia becomes less safe.
Yeah, like clear. I hope Western Australia is equally as safe, but that we all catch up everywhere else.
Yeah.
No, we got it.
Yeah, so we'll either catch up, or in a couple of years they'll just build a wall around Western Australia. They won't let anybody in.
Yeah, get in while you can, folks.
Yeah.
Now, did I have any other notes? Oh, I wanted to say, Harriet, I've thought so many times since we spoke about that thing that you said of Team Climate. And that really makes me happy. You know, like it does. It's sort of like a comforting thing when I feel like, oh my God, what, you know, like the world's going to end or whatever. And then I'll be like, but remember, Harriet says Team Climate, and somewhere in the world, someone is waking up and they're thinking about it. It was really nice. It's just been a comforting thought. Like, yeah, I like that. The fact that you said like millions of people are also thinking about this and working on it and stuff. I mean, obviously I'm really not doing anything, but I know that other people are, and that's comforting.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. That's the good thing about Team Climate. It works if you're on it or if you're not. But obviously, we want you on.
Yeah.
Come join.
I mean, obviously, I'm doing what I can in my very limited way. But, you know, we do what we can. We get milk bottles delivered in glass bottles that are reused. We get organic food delivered in boxes that are reused and then not in plastic bags. I don't know. Like, I'm doing what I can in a very limited way. But
in like the last 6 months, Harriet, has there been anything that's like been particularly heartening in terms of climate, in terms of like, have you seen any like policies or developments or anything that
There has been. You know, it's usually stuff that feels small when you say it out loud because you know, there's so much that needs to be done. And so, you know, every new announcement is great, but also doesn't necessarily make you feel that more hopeful. I can tell you something very cool, which is that in 2020, renewable energy beat fossil fuels across the whole of Europe, meaning that in 2020, renewables generated more energy than fossil fuels in the whole of Europe, which is very, very cool.
Wow.
You know, and this is happening all the time. There are several car brands that have come out and said, we're not even making combustion engine cars anymore. We are only going to make electric cars from now on.
Wow.
Which is amazing. One thing that's also happened, which is kind of less amazing, is that there's this guy who is a human rights lawyer called Stephen Dozinger, who is now on 600 days of house arrest in his New York apartment because he stood up to a major oil company, Chevron, in, I believe it might have been Bolivia. Let me just double check, but it was a South American country. And nobody's covering this. There's almost no reportage about the fact that, like, an American citizen is under house arrest basically by an oil company because of the fact that he's been trying to stop oil development in the Amazon rainforest, which is crazy.
How can that be legal, though? Like, why would he be under house arrest?
That's the question. How is this even legal? How can a company basically put a citizen under house arrest? That's the big question, but it has happened. So, you know, lots of people have said this is insane. But nobody's reporting it. It's really strange. I believe it's actually Ecuador that is the country in question. So yeah, it's kind of fucked up.
That's crazy.
So that's one of the bad things, but the good things are, like, you know, renewable energy continues to just beat out fossil fuels in every single possible context, including price, including its ability to continue generating energy under lots of different circumstances. You know, major companies like, you know, major car companies are just going, we give up on fossil fuels. We're going 100% electric. These are all good signals.
Yeah,
It's a good thing.
100%. Well, I hope that we will keep going in the right direction. Do you have any plans to go back to that kind of work in the future, or do you think you're sort of done for the moment? Do you think it's like you're just going to be a writer now? What are your thoughts on that?
I do want to go back to the work in, you know, the social impact space and the climate space. I'm applying for jobs at, you know, this juncture because I don't want to give that kind of stuff up. I do think it matters. And it gives me so much inspiration for the writing that I'm doing that I don't want to kind of walk away from that. So, you know, we'll see. Obviously, if the writing takes off in such a big way that I have no option but only to write, then I'm going to be perfectly happy to do that, and that's what I'm going to do. But that's kind of a long-term question. I think you're going to have to ask me in another 6 months.
You're really pushing for that third episode. So, Harry, listening back to the first half of the episode, was there anything that surprised you that maybe you talked about, like listening back to yourself?
Yeah, geez, that joke. I really pulled that one out of nowhere. Gonna have to, you know,
I
still
thought you were
working on that.
I honestly thought the punchline was going to be a diplomat, a scientist, and a horse walk into a bar, and they were all Dag Hammarskjöld. And wait,
Dar Hammarskjöld.
yeah, Dag Hammarskjöld, because that guy can do everything, including be a horse.
Do you want to? Oh my god! Do you want to hear something great about Dar Hammarskjöld? Today is the anniversary of when he was first appointed Secretary General. So today is the Dargiversary.
It's a big. Is it a big day in diplomatic circles? The UN is the real.
Only amongst Hammarskjöld nerds like me.
The Hammer fans.
Most people,
they call them
ham fans. Exactly. Well, no, they actually do have a name. They're called the Blues Brothers.
Why?
Like this, cartel of, you know, academics who research Dag Hammarskjöld, who I have met many of them, and they're really nice people. So, you know, they're celebrating today. I'm celebrating today. Pour one out for Dag.
Okay.
Oh, that's nice. I'll make sure to drink to him later.
Have some aquavit. Wait, where's he from? That's
Sweden.
Isn't that? What's the?
I think aquavit is Danish.
Is it Danish? I always forget. It's all the same to me.
I used to live in Copenhagen, and aquavit was the done thing.
Was it?
In Sweden, you have bronvin, which is Swedish schnapps.
Oh, okay. Is it good?
It might be bronvin. I'm not completely sure about the
Is
pronunciation.
aquavit good? Is that the one that tastes like anise? Anise?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
But then so doesn't ouzos taste like anise too, right?
A lot of things taste like
Yeah.
aniseed.
Why is that? It's a really gross
No,
flavor.
It's like I know, right? It's like a go-to flavor for drinks, and you've got to wonder.
So I'm just like, I don't want that. It's disgusting. Anyways,
I don't mind
Sorry.
it. It's kind of licoricey, right? Like it's kind of got a
Yeah.
slightly
Yeah.
licoricey taste. I don't mind.
I think it's the
licorice.
same flavor, right?
Yeah, I quite like that. Okay, so
you and the
Matt's
rest of
finished that
Europe.
joke.
What? It wasn't. It was. I was a genuine. It's not a bit. I'm just saying.
Listen,
Anyway.
Matt, you can't come on here stealing Harriet's jokes, okay? She worked hard on that, the half-finished ending, and she's going to come back and finish it in 6 months.
Okay,
That's correct.
Wait.
I do have an ending. I do have an ending in mind. It's just not perfect yet.
Fine,
you know?
fine.
It needs 6 months
come
of
back
fine
for it.
tuning.
Essentially, the only thing that surprised you was the joke. There wasn't anything else in the last 6 months episode, as in half, that you found surprising.
I mean, I was more concerned about, you know, learning about Matthew's kid and Matthew's baby.
Oh.
I was somewhat surprised that I'm not surprised,
That we had
but
it?
like, oh my god, I really no, I was just excited to learn that had, you know, happened, which is
Oh,
great.
okay.
Obviously, it was going to happen, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I was excited, you know, that I was able to say 2 out of 3 of my, you know, personal projects they came through,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Huge.
It's huge, exactly. I was not surprised but saddened that the fires had happened in Western Australia. I'm somewhat surprised that I haven't kept drawing dark, but I think that's just because now that I have all my time devoted to writing, that's what I'm doing. You know?
And is there anything, what would you say is next for you? Like, I mean, I feel like we kind of know in terms of like, you've got loads of stuff coming up, but yeah, what's next? What's your biggest next thing that you'd like to do?
So if we were talking again in 6 months, I would say the film, hopefully the script, will be out to the actors that we talked about at the beginning of this episode, this conversation. The novel will be not maybe at the end of the second draft, but getting towards the end of the second draft, and will have hopefully been sent out in its early form to some agents. And then a TV show or one of the other projects will hopefully be starting to dial up and ramp up in a way that it wasn't in the last 6 months. So those are my 3 predictions in the next 6 months.
Great.
Right.
Exciting.
Sounds exciting. Yeah, good. Wait, are we? Yeah, and
Were you going
I
to
don't
say
know.
anything else, Matt?
I don't know. I guess we did what's next. Yeah. Is there any social media or anything that you want to plug or anything?
Oh yeah, do you have anything that you'd like to plug that people can like find you or follow you or anything like that?
Online petition
Yeah,
to
you
get
know
your
what?
movie made.
You know what? You can go to my Twitter. My Twitter it's Harriet LR01.
Okay.
Okay.
Couldn't even
At
get...
Harriet LR01. It's not great. It's not a great handle. But you know, that's for those of us who came to it late. And the thing that I plug is that, I've got a pinned tweet, which is an essay that I wrote, which is all about climate change and endangered species, which we're hopefully going to adapt into a short film, which I encourage everybody to check out.
Oh, awesome. I'm going to find you now.
And it's there at the top of the feed.
Is that your only social media? Are you on like Instagram or anything like that?
I am on Insta, but my Insta isn't very good. Can I plug a meme Instagram?
A meme Instagram? Yeah?
Yeah, it's great. Okay, it's called Deep and Meaningful.
Oh, cool. That sounds good.
Okay. And it's meaningful, spelled MEMINGFUL. Like, somebody told me that's meaningful, not meaningful. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Deep and meaningful.
What kind of memes is it? Is it just all kinds of good memes?
All kinds of memes. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Well,
all right. Well, thank you very much for that, Harriet. And it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. It's so nice to catch up and, hear all the amazing stuff you're up to. And I really wish you all the very best with it and look forward to talking about it in the future and hopefully seeing you when I get out there again one day, if the borders are ever open. So
one day.
But in the meantime, all the very best for everything and look after yourself. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me. It's been really fun and it's been great talking to you guys.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Did I seem really distracted in that?
Yeah, you did towards the end. I was wondering what was going on. Is everything
I felt
all right?
really out of it. I'm sorry. I feel really like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry if I was like out of it. I think that, I don't know what's wrong with me.
No, don't be worried about, don't worry about it. I was more just worried that it sounded like you were looking like maybe something was going on with Tavish, which it was.
There's a
Yeah.
lot going on today. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't stress. So listening back was funny hearing us talking about Trump having COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was like, yeah, I mean, it was kind of exactly what we said. Like, he essentially was fine. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was, no one, if anything, it had a negative effect, I would say, with people being like, not worried about it after that.
Yeah.
Or less worried.
He was terrible. We were right about that. And again, I felt bad. I apologize to people now in the present who are hearing us still talk about that. I swear there's only a few more episodes where we talk about him in depth. But yeah, or much at all. So
your April Fool's Day no longer being a thing. I don't know. I feel like it's not really a thing.
I think people were very much like, nobody wants April Fool's Day this year.
I don't think I knew of anyone doing anything other than a stand-up comedian we both know called Simon who did a small prank on his daughter about her having to go back to school or something. But other than that, I literally didn't hear of any pranks whatsoever. So I just feel like people aren't really doing it.
The only thing that I saw that tricked me, and this is going to be very niche, but somebody posted that the Criterion Collection was putting out a box set of Ed Wood films. And I mean, like, come on. Right? But at the same time, I was like, oh, this could be true. I could see them doing this, So it was pretty good prank.
Were you really excited? Were you
a little bit.
Super
I was a little
excited
bit,
and then massively let down.
Yeah, I was like, I would probably get a box set of remastered Blu-rays of Ed Wood films. But anyway, have you ever seen the movie Ed Wood with Johnny Depp?
No, but I have heard about it. What is? Is it worth watching?
Oh, yeah. The movie Ed Wood is great. The movies that Ed Wood is an actual director. And Ed Wood is a biopic of that guy's life. The thing is, he's considered to be like the worst director ever, which is probably not fair. But he made all these really bad B movies, like Plan 9 from Outer Space, Bride of the Monster, Glen or Glenda. Like they're all these just kind of bad sci-fi and like exploitation films that he made. And he's kind of a cult figure. So it was just like a box set of his stuff was not out of the realm of possibility. But then it turned out to be April Fool's prank, and I was like, "Oh, you got me, whoever made this prank."
You're like, I wish that my prediction had come true and that there were no more April Fools.
Yeah. So I felt like a real fool, and I was like, oh. Anyways.
My
Yeah,
prediction about bees was completely... There's been nothing on bees that I know of.
No.
I feel like bees are just the exact same. Although I did find it weird. I feel like we spoke to someone recently, like either last week or the week before, and I'm pretty sure their prediction was also about bees. Do you remember this? I'm sure we spoke to someone about bees recently.
An episode that's going to be coming out in 6 months, or like 5.5 months now. I told you I was going to replant my front yard with wildflowers for bees.
Oh, yes.
And you were confused at why I'd want to help bees. So then
I was. Oh, come on. I wasn't confused. It's lovely that you want to help bees. I just thought that your wildflowers wouldn't be successful.
So, okay. So you had faith in the bees, but not in me. Got it. Now, it seemed like you were like, why would you do this? And I was like, for bees. And but you were like, well, they would just sting you. And...
No, oh my God. I don't think that. I think it was more just, it sounded like you were digging up all your lawn to plant some wildflowers that I didn't think were going to grow. Like that's basically the crux of it. But I feel like we spoke to someone else about bees like maybe 2 weeks ago or last week, and that their prediction for the future was like something like that bees would all die and we would all die or something like that. I can't remember.
This sounds about like a prediction that somebody would make on our show.
Yeah.
But I don't recall that. Maybe I've blocked it out of my brain.
How annoying. Who was it? Anyway, it's gone. We'll probably find out in 6 months when their episode comes up.
Guys, stay tuned because it might come up.
That sounds riveting. I don't know. Other than that, has anything exciting been going on in your life?
I just had, an April Fool's Day. That's over. Trump lived. That was a disappointment. But yeah, been an eventful 6 months. I don't know. I got nothing. Oh my God, I'm so out of it.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I mean, with me.
There's nothing wrong with you. You're doing absolutely brilliantly.
I think I'm a bit sleep deprived.
God, that's so strange. Like there'd be no reason for you to be sleep deprived, I don't think.
Well, I think that the problem is that I was up late editing a bunch of stuff. I was trying to catch up on my editing, and then instead of just going right to bed, I laid in bed and read a bunch of comic books, Marvel app, and I was like, just be sleeping.
Yeah. Actually, I saw that you'd answered a message to me on Facebook Messenger at like 3 a.m. and because it said that you'd read it like 3 hours before, and I was obviously up at 6 a.m. with the boys like reading it, and I was just like, Matt should not be getting blue light at 3 a.m. Turn the devices off. I think I definitely would recommend having a rule that you like turn the devices off by a certain time.
See, yeah, I need to get better sleep hygiene habits. I'm bad about that. So
because blue light is really bad for you in terms of your sleep quality.
My tablet has like a blue light setting, like a blue light filter or something. So, but then if I'm reading that at night, I don't know, it's probably not good either.
No. Probably not in the middle of the night. But anyway, sorry to hear that. And I hope you get better sleep tonight. I'll be messaging you at 2 a.m. being like, get off the phone.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we should probably do the whole like, thanks so much for listening, guys. We really appreciate
Sounds so sincere
it.
when you say it.
Thanks for listening, guys, or whatever. No, thank you so much for listening, everyone. We really, really appreciate it. And if you are enjoying the show, we'd be so grateful if you would write us a review and please subscribe, obviously. And also feel free to contact us on 6monthlaterpod@gmail.com, or you can follow us on all the different social media type stuff at 6 months later pod. You can also check out Matt's social media on...
I'm M. Shadoran on various things. You can check those out. I'm not much of a social media person, but I do make other media, and you can check out one of my other podcasts. And I have a podcast called Saint Misbehavin', which had a news episode yesterday that you can check out. I do not know what it's about because I'm not recording it until this afternoon, but I've been reassured by my researcher that it is Saint Pay Dirt. And so... or some kind of gold, I forget. Anyways, so it's supposed to be pretty good. So I would check it out. I think it's a fun podcast I do with my friend Anna. So yeah. And where can people find you, Tara?
You can find me on Tara NW Comedy for the moment still, or just search Tara Newton Wordsworth. I'm doing stuff. I have not been doing a huge amount recently because I've been feeling just not particularly creative, but I'm going to get back up on the old creating horse soon and make it some videos.
Say maketh.
I don't know why I said any of that. Just forget I ever said that. And but yeah,
Like a
please
knight of old.
feel free to follow me on Tara NW Comedy. Take it easy, guys. You know, love life. Enjoy the opening of, you know, things coming out of lockdown. Get out there, enjoy the sunshine, or snow like it was yesterday, which was very strange. But anyway, kind of proof of climate change, I guess. And yeah,
Yay.
have a fantastic week, and we'll speak to you next week.
In 6 months. Bye. Is somebody's smoke alarm going off?
Mine's not.
Oh,
I
it's
can hear
mine.
that. It's definitely.
Can I go? I gotta go check on that.
Hopefully that's okay.
Hopefully his house isn't burning down.
Yeah, hopefully.